In the early morning hours, in the middle of the South China Sea, the ocean has turned into monster waves. The night is black, the horizon is invisible, and the U.S. Navy destroyer is climbing a wall of water so tall it could swallow a skyscraper. On the bridge, every man's eyes are fixed forward as the bow rises higher and higher until gravity finally pulls the ship down. The destroyer slams into the trough, steel shuddering, the sound like a thunderclap echoing through the hull. The storm is no ordinary squall. This is a full-force tropical storm, the kind that tears fishing fleets apart and buries cargo ships. The waves are stacked one on top of the other, each one darker and heavier than the last. Spray rips sideways across the deck, carried by winds so violent that they scream through every gap in the superstructure. Outside, you can't tell sky from sea. Everything is the same shade of black. Lightning explodes behind the clouds for a split second, painting the destroyer's silhouette against a boiling ocean. Then it's gone, back to blackness and the sound of wind that never stops. Water crashes over the forward deck, rushing aft in torrents that slam against hatches and railings. Every impact feels like a hammer strike against the hull, a reminder that nature doesn't care about radar, missiles, or technology. Out here, steel bends to the sea. The destroyer claws its way upward again, engines straining, propellers biting into the deep before the ship crests another peak. The crew braces for the next fall. There's no rhythm, no mercy, just chaos in every direction. And somewhere in this chaos, every sailor on board is thinking the same thing. How long can we take this? Because tonight the enemy isn't another navy, it isn't a missile, or a submarine, or a jet screaming in low. Tonight the enemy is the ocean itself. And the ocean doesn't play by anyone's rules. The destroyer crashes down into another trough, and for a terrifying moment, the bow disappears completely beneath the waterline. A wall of thick green seawater pours over the deck, racing aft like a river unleashed. Every piece of equipment topside, rails, antennas, even the gun mount, takes the full hit. Anything not bolted down is gone in seconds. The ship groans as if it were alive. Steel flexes under the load, the hull bending just enough to hold, but never without protest. Every slam of the waves is a shock load. Thousands of tons of force hitting the bow in less than a heartbeat. Naval engineers call it slamming pressure. To the crew, it feels like a giant's fist pounding the ship again and again. Spray blinds the sensors mounted high on the mast. The powerful Spy 1 radar, normally able to track hundreds of targets across the horizon, washes out under the sheets of salt water and electrical interference. Navigation radars blink, screens flicker, and for a moment the ship is effectively blind in the middle of a storm. Technology may be advanced, but it doesn't stop seawater from shorting circuits. Down the sides, scuppers, the drains designed to clear water from the decks, spew like fountains as they fight to keep up. But with every surge, the deck becomes a temporary river. Hatches shut tight, watertight seals groaning under the pressure as seawater tries to force its way into the compartments below. The crew knows the dangers. If too much water collects topside, it raises the ship's center of gravity, making it more vulnerable to rolling. That's why sailors scramble in foul weather to clear the blocked drains, even in the middle of the chaos. One mistake, one clogged scupper, and the destroyer could take on more water than it can shed. Deep inside the hull, the pounding feels different. It's not just noise, it's vibration that carries through the bulkheads into every compartment, shaking bunks and lockers and even the steel tables in the mess deck. Every slam is a reminder this isn't just weather. This is a test of the ship's very structure. And outside, the storm has no intention of letting up. The waves keep coming, stacked higher and faster, each one threatening to push the destroyer past the edge of what even American steel can endure. On the bridge, red lights glow dimly, bright enough to read instruments, dark enough to keep night vision alive. The captain stands firm, one hand gripping the rail, the other resting near the engine telegraph. His voice cuts through the roar of the storm, sharp and measured. "Hold her steady, bow into the wave, reduce 5 knots. Every order is repeated back instantly. No hesitation, no mistakes. In seas like this, hesitation can kill. The helmsman fights the wheel with both hands. Every time the bow lifts, the rudder feels sluggish, almost powerless until the stern digs back into the sea. Each correction is small, deliberate, and precise. Overcorrect, and the destroyer could swing broadside into the waves. A roll that could end everything. Alarms chirp and wail in quick bursts, not from weapons but from systems overloaded by water and vibration. Electronics officers hunch over flickering screens, rerouting circuits, muting unnecessary alerts. The storm is chaos enough. Nobody needs false alarms screaming over the real danger outside. Below decks, the experience is a different kind of battle. Passageways echo with the groan of metal and the crash of unsecured gear. Sailors move through the ship clipped to safety lines, one hand always on the bulkhead. In berthing areas, sailors try to rest in their racks, but sleep is a generous word. Each bunk is a steel frame with a canvas stretched tight, stacked 3 high. In calm seas, they sway gently. Tonight, they whip side to side so hard that sailors strap themselves in webbing belts to keep from being hurled out. Every slam of the bow against the waves feels like an earthquake, shaking the very air inside the compartment. In the mess deck, cooks still do their job. Meals are stripped down to storm rations. Sandwiches, packaged snacks, hot coffee sloshing in insulated containers. Plates and mugs are useless. Everything is served in squeeze bottles or sealed trays. Hell, even eating is an act of survival at this point. Damage control teams stand ready at every junction, wearing helmets and flash gear, kits slung over their shoulders. Their job? Respond instantly to flooding, fire, or a hull breach. They drill for this endlessly, but drilling in calm seas is nothing like responding in a storm where even walking straight is impossible. Every man and woman on board knows it. The destroyer is holding, but the ocean is trying harder with every wave to rip her apart. And all they can do is ride it out. The destroyer crests another wave, then drops hard again, rolling 20 degrees to port before the keel bites back against the swell. On the bridge, every officer's eyes flick to the inclinometer, a simple needle on a dial that tells them just how far the ship is leaning. 10 degrees? Manageable. 20? Dangerous. Anything past 30, and the ship edges into the zone sailors fear the most: capsize. A destroyer isn't a small vessel. 9,000 tons of steel packed with weapons, engines, and electronics. But in the wrong angle, even a giant can be thrown onto its side. Broadside to the waves, the roll becomes violent, and once a ship passes a certain point, gravity finishes what the sea started. There's no recovering. That's why the captain's orders never change. Bow into the waves. Hold speed low but not dead. Too much speed and the ship slams so hard it risks structural damage. Too little and the waves push her around like a cork. Balance is everything. Engines surge and slow with every command. Propellers digging for a grip against the walls of water that want nothing more than to spin the ship sideways. Every sailor on board knows the rule. Never turn broadside to a storm. Training pounds that lesson in from day one. But knowing it and living it are two very different things when the walls of water are taller than buildings, rise out of the dark and slam against the hull. Even the most advanced warships aren't immune. Gyroscopic stabilizers, reinforced hulls, and naval architecture can only buy so much safety. Beyond that, it's down to seamanship and discipline. One bad helm order, one hesitation in the throttle, and the South China Sea would claim yet another victim. Steel and crew swallowed whole. Inside, no one talks about capsizing out loud, but the thought hangs in the air with every violent roll. Unspoken but understood. This ship is only upright because hundreds of sailors are fighting, second by second, to keep it that way. In the chaos of the storm, every wave looks enormous, but sailors know that there's something far worse out there. Something that doesn't follow the normal rhythm of the sea. They call it a rogue wave. A rogue wave isn't just big, it's unpredictable. While the storm may throw waves 30 feet high, a rogue can suddenly tower 60, even 80 feet, rising from nowhere like a wall of liquid steel. These monsters don't roll gently across the ocean. They stand up vertically, hit with a crushing force, and then vanish back into the sea as if they were never there. Scientists once thought that rogue waves were sailors' tales, exaggerations after too much time at sea. That all changed in 1995 when the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea recorded a single wave over 80 feet high, dwarfing everything around it. Since then, ships across the world have confirmed encounters. Hulls twisted, windows blown out, even supertankers crippled. For a warship, the threat is just as real. A destroyer can cut through heavy seas, but a rogue wave doesn't care about design or technology. If it strikes head-on, the bow may slam down with such force that welds crack and equipment rips free. If it catches the ship from the side, it can roll thousands of tons of steel past its tipping point. What makes them so deadly is their suddenness. Rogue waves can rise in calm seas, or even in storms like this one, stacking on top of the existing swells until they tower above everything else. There's no warning, there's no radar alarm. By the time the lookout sees it, the ship is already climbing its face, or bracing for the crash. Every sailor on this destroyer knows the stories. Merchant ships lost without a trace. Naval vessels battered so badly that they had to limp home. Never the same. And in the South China Sea tonight, with storm waves already pounding at skyscraper height, the thought hangs heavy. If a rogue rises here, will the destroyer survive? Below decks, the storm has already turned daily life into survival training. Sailors wedge themselves into narrow passageways just to try and stay upright. Every step has to be timed with the roll of the ship. In the mess, meals are stripped to the basics. Hot trays and ceramic mugs are useless. They'd launch across the room at first roll. Instead, sailors eat from the sealed containers, balancing against the bulkhead with one hand and holding their food in the other. Coffee served in plastic squeeze bottles and not cups. Nobody lingers. Meals are swallowed quickly before the next violent slam. Sleep is just as brutal. In calmer seas, racks feel like small hammocks. In this storm, they're roller coasters. Sailors strap themselves into their bunks with belts, some lying awake, counting the seconds between waves. Every crash has an entire frame. Every groan of the steel bulkheads is a reminder that the ship is under constant assault. But amid the chaos, training takes over. Teams move as one, executing damage checks, clearing drains, reinforcing hatches. Nobody panics, not because they're not afraid, but because fear has no place when survival depends on discipline. Each sailor trusts the next one, a chain of responsibility stretching from the lowest deckhand to the captain up on the bridge. This battle isn't about weapons or strategy. No missile system can fight the ocean. It's about endurance, teamwork, and trust. In this moment, the destroyer isn't a machine of war, it's a lifeboat of steel, held together by the skill and the resolve of the people inside. Tonight, it's not Navy versus enemy. It's humanity versus nature, and nature never surrenders. The storm doesn't